The garage smelled of motor oil, metal, and late-night ambition, a comforting scent for Sofia Ivanov, who thrived in this little world of wrenches and grease stains. She wiped her hands on a rag, already planning to close up for the night, when the sharp purr of a car engine cut through the quiet. A sleek black vehicle rolled up slowly, stopping with an authority that made the hairs on her arms stand on end. The driver stepped out, a man whose presence seemed to command every shadow in the garage. He wore dark clothing that matched the polished sheen of his car, but it wasn't the style that made Sofia pause. It was the intensity in his eyes, the kind that could read through walls or maybe even people. He approached the hood, scanning the car with practiced scrutiny, and then his gaze landed on her. "Who fixed my car?" His voice was low, clipped, and not a question he expected an ordinary answer to. Sofia straightened, brushing grease from her palms. "I did," she said, steady despite the unexpected confrontation. There was no room for hesitation in her garage. Mistakes were costly and pride was everything. A faint smirk flickered across his face, one that didn't quite reach the sharpness in his eyes. He leaned casually on the hood, watching her work as if he could anticipate every turn of the wrench. Sofia felt an unusual mix of irritation and intrigue. She didn't usually welcome attention, certainly not from men who seemed carved from shadows. Yet, in the silence that stretched between them, there was a spark, something unspoken but undeniable. A collision of two worlds, hers of oil-stained hands and late-night labor, his of wealth, power, and mystery. And somehow the night had only just begun. The next day the garage felt quieter, almost ordinary, but Sofia couldn't shake the memory of the man in black. She tried to focus on her work, tuning engines and tightening bolts, yet the image of his intense gaze lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. The sound of tires rolling on gravel broke her concentration, and before she could react, the black car was back. Her heart gave a small, unbidden jump. This time he wasn't just inspecting the car. He was looking at her. Dmitri Volkov. The name she didn't yet know, but the presence she couldn't forget. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said, voice quieter than yesterday, though still carrying authority. He leaned casually against the car, one hand brushing over the polished hood. There was something almost human in the way he smiled, brief, fleeting, but enough to make her uneasy. Sofia considered her options. She could shut the garage door and send him away. She could pretend she was too busy. But instead, curiosity won. "All right," she said, crossing her arms. "Talk fast. I don't usually let strangers linger." He chuckled, a sound low and unexpected, not menacing at all. "I like people who know their worth," he said. There was a pause and then he added, "Let me buy you a drink. Something small. In the garage. Don't worry, no fancy restaurants, no distractions." Sofia hesitated, then shrugged. A drink in her own space didn't feel dangerous. As they sat across from each other, sharing stories of late nights and odd jobs, the tension between them softened. She began to notice details, the way his fingers flexed when he talked, the way his eyes lingered on hers just a second too long. By the time he left, she realized it wasn't just her skills that impressed him. Something about her had caught him, and maybe, just maybe, she had caught him too. The days that followed were a careful dance. Dmitri didn't call, but somehow his presence lingered around the garage like a quiet echo. Sofia worked on engines and transmissions, her hands moving with practiced ease, yet she couldn't stop glancing at the entrance, half expecting him to appear at any moment. And he did. This time, he leaned casually against the doorway, observing her as she tightened bolts on a vintage motorcycle. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, though his tone suggested the opposite. He always appeared at the edge of her world, just enough to unsettle her, but never enough to make her feel cornered. Sofia raised an eyebrow. "If you're here to watch, I charge for an audience," she teased, wiping sweat from her brow. Dmitri's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then I'll consider myself fortunate to be your paying customer," he said, eyes glinting with amusement. Despite herself, Sofia felt the tension between them grow, not dangerous but electric. She caught herself noticing how he moved, how he listened, and how he seemed almost human beneath the carefully constructed aura of authority. And yet, she reminded herself, he was dangerous, part of a world she didn't belong to. "Why do you keep coming here?" she asked quietly, more curious than confrontational. "Because you're different," he said simply, leaning closer just enough for their shoulders to brush. The contact was fleeting, almost accidental, yet it sent a jolt through her, a mix of surprise and something softer, something she didn't quite understand yet. They shared a moment of silence, each measuring the other, testing boundaries and learning without words. There was curiosity in his eyes, determination in hers, and the unspoken acknowledgement that this dance was only beginning. It was an ordinary morning in Sofia's garage, the kind where the sunlight slanted through the dusty windows just right, illuminating every scratch and oil stain. She was adjusting the carburetor on an old sedan when a soft whine caught her attention. A small dog, scruffy and shivering, had wandered in through the open door, tail tucked tightly. Sofia crouched down, extending her hand slowly. "Hey there, little one," she murmured. The dog hesitated, then inched closer, sniffing her fingers cautiously. She wrapped it gently in her jacket, wondering how such a small thing could cause such a big mess in her morning routine. Then footsteps approached, heavy, purposeful, yet careful. Dmitri stood in the doorway, observing the scene quietly. "You can't save them all," he said softly, voice absent of judgment. Sofia glanced up, surprised. "I wasn't asking you to," she replied, though she noticed a flicker of something in his eyes, a kind of concern she hadn't seen before. Without another word, Dmitri stepped forward, helping her secure a makeshift bed for the dog in the corner of the garage. His hands were steady, deliberate, and there was a patience there that contrasted sharply with the image of the powerful man she had first met. When the dog finally settled, tail wagging slightly, Sofia looked at him. You're different from what I expected." He shrugged, but there was warmth in his expression. "Maybe I just like seeing people care," he said almost casually. And then, before leaving, he offered her a brief hug, gentle, reassuring, protective. Not the possessive kind, but the kind that spoke of trust, gratitude, and understanding. Sofia felt the tension of the last few days melt just a little. For the first time, she saw Dmitri not as a shadow looming over her life, but as someone capable of genuine care. The quiet rhythm of Sofia's garage was broken one afternoon by the unmistakable sound of engines roaring too close for comfort. She looked up from a half-dismantled engine and felt a familiar chill in her chest. A group of men in dark jackets had parked just outside, their intentions clear in the way they lingered too long watching. Sofia's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. Years of working with stubborn machines had taught her that panic never solved anything. Yet, in that moment she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just protecting tools and vehicles. This was about her life, her space, her independence. A shadow fell across the entrance. Dmitri appeared silently, as if summoned by instinct. His eyes scanned the men, sharp and calculating. Without a word, he stepped closer to Sofia, his presence a barrier she hadn't realized she needed. The men hesitated, sensing something unspoken yet powerful. Then, as quickly as they had arrived, they left, muttering under their breath but clearly intimidated. Dmitri didn't speak immediately. He waited until the danger was gone, then turned to her. "You need to be careful," he said, his voice firm but not accusing. Sofia nodded, grateful yet wary of the world he clearly controlled. She realized in that brief encounter that his visits weren't just curiosity or fascination. They were protection, quiet and unannounced but effective. She couldn't deny the safety she felt when he was near, even as she wrestled with the idea of relying on someone else. When he left, he lingered for a second, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The contact was brief, but in that moment, trust formed silently between them. The city's hum faded behind them as Dmitri drove Sofia out of the urban maze into open roads she rarely visited. The garage, the engines, the constant smell of oil, it all seemed to belong to another world. Here, sunlight stretched across the hills, brushing the trees and the winding road with gold. Sofia glanced at him, noticing the subtle ease in his posture, the rare moments when he wasn't commanding attention or imposing authority. He caught her looking and offered a small, almost shy smile. It was different from the man she had met days ago, intense and enigmatic. This Dmitri was quieter, more approachable, more human. They stopped at a small clearing overlooking a sparkling river. The kind of place that made people forget schedules, deadlines and worries. Sofia felt a weight lift from her shoulders, something she hadn't realized had been pressing so heavily for years. "I come here sometimes," Dmitri admitted quietly. "To think, to breathe." Sofia nodded, understanding immediately. "It's peaceful," she said. "Almost like a different world." They sat side by side on a fallen log, feet brushing against the soft grass. The conversation meandered, from trivial memories to dreams neither had spoken aloud before. Laughter came easy here, and even silence felt comfortable. The distance from their usual worlds made the barriers between them thinner, their curiosity about each other growing naturally. At one point, as the sun dipped lower, Dmitri's arm brushed hers. The contact was light, accidental perhaps, but warm. Sofia felt a quiet comfort in it, the kind that told her she was safe, seen, and understood without words. The day ended too quickly, but when they returned to the city, Sofia realized something important. She was beginning to trust him, not just as a protector, but as someone who could walk alongside her in a life that suddenly felt bigger than the garage walls. The garage was quieter than usual that evening, the kind of silence that feels heavy with unspoken thoughts. Sofia wiped her hands on a rag, glancing at the sleek black car parked near the doorway. Dmitri leaned against it, watching her with a calmness that made her heart beat faster than she wanted to admit. "I've been thinking," Sofia said carefully, breaking the silence, "about all of this." She gestured vaguely at the garage, the car, even him. "About what it means to get close to someone like you." Dmitri's eyes softened, the intensity of his gaze easing into something warmer. "And what is that?" he asked, voice quiet but steady, inviting honesty. "I'm not sure," she admitted. "You're complicated. Dangerous in ways I can't control. And yet I feel," her words faltered, but she didn't stop. "I feel like I can trust you." There was a pause, the kind that stretches comfortably when two people are learning to understand each other. Dmitri stepped closer, careful not to crowd her. "I've been thinking too," he said, a rare vulnerability in his tone. "I spend so much time protecting, commanding, surviving. I forget what it's like to just exist with someone. Someone who sees me for me, not for what I am." Sofia's chest tightened. She realized this was more than fascination or curiosity, it was connection, rare and unforced. Dmitri's hand brushed hers as he leaned slightly closer, the contact fleeting but deliberate. "I don't know where this will go," he admitted. "But I want to find out, with you." Sofia smiled, a quiet, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Me too," she whispered, feeling a weight lift and a warmth settle in its place. For the first time, both of them felt the thrill of honesty and trust, the kind that forms the foundation of something lasting. The evening air in the garage was thick with the familiar smell of oil and metal, but tonight it carried a tension Sofia couldn't ignore. Footsteps echoed outside, deliberate and heavy, followed by low voices that didn't belong to any of her usual customers. Her heart tightened. She had hoped the incident days ago was a one-time scare, but now it was clear, trouble had returned. Dmitri appeared as silently as ever, stepping from the shadows, his eyes scanning the men outside with razor-sharp precision. Without a word, he moved beside her, a silent wall of strength and assurance. The men lingered, seemingly unaware of the man they were provoking, until a subtle shift in Dmitri's posture made them hesitate. One of them muttered something under his breath, then the group melted back into the night, leaving the garage and its occupants untouched. Sofia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The adrenaline left her shaking, but the presence of Dmitri steadied her. His hand found hers in a protective grip, not harsh, not demanding, but enough to anchor her in the safety he provided. "You don't have to face this alone," he said quietly, his voice a calm counterpoint to the lingering tension. Sofia nodded, feeling the warmth of the trust between them deepen. She realized that it wasn't just his strength that mattered, it was his choice to stand with her, to protect her without overstepping, without taking away her independence. As the night settled, the garage returned to its familiar quiet. But something had changed. Both of them understood that danger was part of their world, yet together they could face it, and that unspoken promise drew them closer than ever. Sofia sat at her workbench, hands hovering over a set of tools she barely noticed. Her phone had just buzzed with news that could change everything. A job offer in another city, one that promised growth, independence, and a fresh start. She felt a rush of excitement, quickly followed by hesitation. Dmitri's presence was behind her before she even realized it. He leaned casually against the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. "Good news?" he asked, tone calm but curious. Sofia hesitated. "It could be a big opportunity," she admitted, "but it would mean leaving everything here. Leaving you." He stepped closer, resting a hand lightly on the edge of the bench. "Sofia," he said softly, "I won't ask you to stay. I can't, and I won't. But I hope. I hope you choose to stay because you want to. Not because of me, not because of fear, not because of danger." Her chest tightened at his words. There was no pressure, no shadow of his Mafia world looming over her decision, just honesty and a choice. She began, searching for words, "I don't want to leave you. But I also don't want to regret not taking this for myself." Dmitri smiled faintly, almost proud. "Then make your choice freely," he said. "Whatever you decide, I'll respect it." Sofia looked into his eyes, seeing not the powerful, untouchable man she had first met, but someone who cared, someone who trusted her judgment. And in that moment she realized that home wasn't just a place, it was a person. She made her choice. And when she stepped forward, Dmitri pulled her into a gentle, lingering hug. A hug full of trust, warmth, and quiet promise. The garage smelled of familiar oil and metal, but tonight it felt different. Lighter, warmer, like the space itself was celebrating. Sofia stepped in, her hands clean for once, her heart steady. She had made her choice, and it had brought her here, back to him, back to the world that had once felt too dangerous to touch. Dmitri was waiting by the sleek black car, but this time there was no intensity, no sharp edge, just a quiet presence that made the room feel safe, complete. When he saw her, his lips curved into a small smile, one that held relief, pride, and something softer, almost tender. "You're mine now," he said, not as a command but as a statement, as a promise. Sofia smiled in return, stepping closer. "I'm yours," she said, and in that simple exchange all the tension, uncertainty, and danger of the past weeks seemed to melt away. They embraced, a long, lingering hug that spoke of trust, understanding, and the beginning of forever. It wasn't about possession, it was about choosing each other willingly, freely, with hearts open and unguarded. The warmth of that moment wrapped around them like a shield, and for the first time, Sofia felt that the world outside the garage didn't matter. As they pulled back slightly, their eyes met with unspoken agreement. Whatever challenges came next, they would face them together. The black car, the grease-stained tools, the quiet hum of the city outside, all of it was part of their story now, but it no longer defined them. They walked out of the garage side by side, shoulders brushing, hearts aligned, stepping into a future they had chosen for themselves. A life built on trust, courage, and love.